All right. Next up is screening tenants for long-term success. So one of the foundations of the course is to definitely get the right tenant. But again, we want long-term tenants. We want people that want to be appreciative of the property, people that are really eager to be long-term residents of your property and take advantage of the benefits of. All right, the next lesson up is really something that you have to pay attention to. So I know the foundation of the program is ensuring that you get the right property and the right location. You do your numbers and everything like that. But once you have the property, it's stationary. But what you really don't want to have is a very fluid situation with tenants coming in and out. The goal is to get long-term tenants. And so there's some things that I definitely would like to point out for you in this lesson to ensure that you get people that are, number one, appreciative of the property, quality tenants who want to be there for the long term. So let's go ahead and switch over. Switch my screen and we'll kind of walk through these bullets and I'll add some color to make sure it's very clear. But again, if you have any questions, email me at info@mosesthementor.com and I'll make sure to get back to you ASAP. Also, make sure to visit, well, not visit, just join us on our weekly Q&A call where, you can ask your questions at that moment or you can set up a one-on-one coaching. But let's jump into it. So first, all right. So let's talk about some of the selection criteria. And I talk a lot and I don't really respect the bullets. So let me just put a few bullets out here so we can run through it. All right. Um, so the first thing, selection criteria, right? So some might say, well, why does credit matter when you have a Section 8 tenant and the rent is guaranteed? I will tell you now, again, having perfect credit maybe doesn't matter, but having someone who cares about their credit profile is an indication of how they actually will treat other people's property. So I would say that the approach should be to at least get someone that has fair credit. As high as possible, but at least fair credit. So we're looking at about like a 600. Some ranges might even say 580, but I do like to see a 6 at least in front of the credit score. That makes me feel perfectly fine with the situation. I also then, regardless of credit score, even if this person has an 800 credit score, which is definitely possible because credit is not based upon someone's income. So you definitely could have someone who has a high credit score. I do require at least a 1 month deposit for someone who has a 600 or higher. Another reason why you want to make sure that someone has a good credit score or at least a fair credit score is because the amount of rent that a tenant pays can fluctuate. You might inherit, you might get a tenant and maybe they just had a newborn baby, or maybe they're pregnant at the moment. And because of that, they're not able to work. But as the baby grows up and become a toddler, they put them in daycare, now they go to work. So now their income is based upon whatever they make. They could be making minimum wage, they could be making more than minimum wage. But whatever the case may be, they have to recertify every year. And we talk a little bit more about that later in the course, but they have to recertify. And at that point, their income changes. So you might go from getting 100% of the rent to maybe 90% of the rent or 95% or 85, whatever the case may be. They have a calculation in the formula to really break that down. And although you will always get the majority of your rent, the large chunk of your rent will always come from the government, oftentimes all. You don't want to have to chase a tenant down to say, hey, $50, $100, $40, whatever the case may be. You want to be able to collect that when you collect the other rent. So that's number one. And then number two, I just, like I noted before, like, your credit score is also, has, I don't want to say 100% character, but, if you take out a loan or you take out, um, some type of financial instrument and you fail to pay it, I just think that's something that a landlord should, take note of. You definitely want to take note of that because, what if, the security deposit is not sufficient? Would this person pay it back? Just think about those things. So don't ignore credit score just because they have Section 8. That would be a mistake. Now, there is a tier that I will go. I will still say, okay, well, if I'm having my interviews and I'm reading the application and just, it seems like this person would be a great fit, for my property. But their credit score is just really low. It's like, it's under 600, it's 560. This is when, I do have a conversation about potentially offering the property, but with an increased security deposit. Now, what I will say, because people may ask me, they'll say, hey, well, if they're on Section 8, how can they afford a security deposit? Number one, not all Section 8, not all Section 8 recipients are the same. Some really do work full time and they do have income. They are able to save up, they are able to do what normal people do, and they might have some savings that they can tap into. Other times, people might have, it could be a tax return. It can also be a subsidy from the housing authority that they might give them, typically 1 month's rent. So if you have a situation here where you're like, hey, I really want to approve this person, but I would prefer to get, 1.25 or 1.5 times the rent, you may come into a situation where the housing authority would only give you 1 month's rent, and you would just have to be okay with that if you elect to approve that person. There's also other private um, institutions that offer housing assistance that might, supply a security deposit for, someone that's interested in your home. So there's a wide range of sources of security deposits, and it's really not a concern of you, really. Like, you have your standard, you don't deviate from your standard. If you feel like, based upon this person's credit score, that they should give you 1.25 or 1.5 times, that's completely within your realm. Now, if they can't provide that, then they just can't provide it. You move on to the next applicant. um, I absolutely, 1,000,000% do not accept anyone that has an eviction. These are going to be professional renters. They're going to have a story as to why they have an eviction on their record, and I wish them well. But I will not coach you guys or mentor you guys in any way to make an exception for that at all. I just won't. So no evictions. And then the other one, I actually got caught with this one, no co-signers. Co-signers, it really doesn't benefit you as Section 8 because I remember doing it like, I was like, why did I do this? I guess, I got the security deposit that I wanted. And it ended up, actually, the tenant is still in there. But in all actuality, the co-signer could have been a boyfriend. I don't know who it was as far as relationship wise, but the person had like an 800 credit score. So when I seen that, I think I got a little little above my head. But she's been in the place for over 3 years now. So I guess it worked out. But in hindsight, though, if it didn't work out, I would have had nobody to blame but myself. I do not put anyone, especially for Section 8, because Section 8, you can only have the recipients and their children live there anyway. So having a cosigner is just not something it shouldn't even matter. If their credit is not good enough, and that's what really it was. This person had under 560 credit score, and she offered her cosigner, and that person was more than willing to sign and be on the lease. Um, it was an exception that fortunately worked out, but I don't want us to play in that fire. I would just say no co-signers at all. Just work directly with the recipient, Section 8, and you. Don't let any other parties come in. It's not worth it. No, when you go through him lane and if you elect to use him lane for your software for the way to manage your properties, it's pretty simple. You know, they have the list of applicants that's there, and they'll show you the the background check, right? And you're able to scan through it. You're able to see if this person has any criminal record or any type of record at all, and if there's anything alluding to drugs, any felonies, any domestic violence, any indecent behavior or anything like that, you just don't even try to figure out why this should work. Just don't do it. I also will say like the only thing I really will gloss over is like traffic violations. Anything else, I'm just really not for it. I don't need that in my operation, so I just rather deal with someone that doesn't have a record. And I would strongly advise that you do the same. I also don't want anyone who has any judgments. Again, you know, someone who is not on top of paying people on time. I just want to avoid it. I just want to avoid that. So if you have a judgment, I don't want that as well. And as far as in before I go to the next part, if you stick to your guns on this, there will be plenty of candidates that fit this selection criteria. Plenty. And in contrast, when I used to rent to cash tenants, it was very difficult to find folks that could, number one, meet the income requirement, because you're looking to get someone who makes at least 3-4 times your rent, someone who has the credit, someone who's willing to be there for a long time. So you had this, you know, beautiful ideal tenant, but then you're like, okay, I hope this person stays past their lease, and it just never happened. It was always like, okay, well, this person stayed, they were a good tenant, but then they realized, like, why am I paying rent? My credit score is 750. I make six figures. What the heck am I paying rent for? And they go buy a house. So that was the thinking for me. Is like, you know, I need someone to stay. I need someone to want to be here. And that's why I love Section 8. And that's why you're here, because you either love Section 8 or will be loving Section 8. It's because these tenants, when you get the right one, they stay, they appreciate it, and you don't have to constantly shuffle every year. So, um, the last thing on this, as far as screening tenants that I wanted to talk about, is well, two things. Well, the first thing, before I note this one, I alluded to it a little bit before this, but once you get, you know, some applicants um, that are starting to rise to the top, because they're going to start calling and stuff like that, you know, really have a good conversation with them. You know, ask yourself, hey, is this someone you want to communicate with? Is this someone that sounds professional? Is this someone that sounds like they sounds eager? I asked them, hey, you know, are you looking for somewhere long term? You know, describe, you know, the last few times you've rented. And if I see like they're really like bouncing from place to place, then, you know, they're going to lose points with me. But if they say, oh, yeah, you know, I was at this place, but the owner, you know, moved, you know, sold the property, or maybe, you know, my job now is on the opposite side of town, something like that. Like I'm looking for a really good reason why they left where they were. Another good reason might be, you know, I had a baby and now I need a bigger place. You know, I would love to stay where I'm at, but, you know, I need 3 bedrooms, but I'm in a 2 bedroom. So I look for really, you know, reasons why someone would say, okay, I need to move, not just packing your bags and just hitting the road. So ask those questions. And if you get a good rapport, you know, continue the relationship. You know, hey, go ahead and set up a showing. How did you like it? All that type of stuff. So just want to let you know, you have to really communicate to get the right tenant. You really do. And this one right here is like the gold standard if you're able to do this. Because again, I'm in Atlanta, my properties are in Cleveland. I'm not always able to do this. Most of the time, I'm not. I wish I could do it every time. But essentially, it's two things. Um, what I was talking about is the home visit. But before I jump into that, let me just note here about the speaking to the current landlord. So when you speak to the landlord, you want to uncover these two things. So how was the tenant's communication? Because then at that point, you're able to compare how they communicate with you thus far to what this prior landlord is saying. So you can compare it. And then you want to know, hey, did they pay on time? And then you also want to know, why are they leaving? Just comparing what they're saying to what the landlord is saying. If the landlord says, hey, I sold the property, cool. And they said they sold, perfect. Makes perfect sense. If they said something like, I've had situations where a tenant was a cash paying tenant and they got approved for Section 8, but the prior landlord didn't want to accept Section 8. So that was the only reason why they ended up moving. I love that situation. So it just means that they were a good tenant, but now that they have Section 8, they would like to move to a Section 8, um, I guess, property, someone who would accept Section 8. So, those are the things you want to really communicate with the landlord. Now, granted, the landlord could just flat out lie to you because they want them out of the place. But you guys are smart, because you wouldn't be in this program if you weren't smart. You can get a sense if someone is being genuine with you and gauge it from there. So and then the last thing, which I was trying to talk about a moment ago, was the home visit. If you're able to say, hey, I love to come by and meet you in person, this is a great opportunity to see how your prospective tenant lives today. If their place is a mess, especially if they invited you over, or you asked to come over, knowing that you're coming over and their place is a mess, then you already know this is not a good tenant for you. Now, you can't just pop up. So if they somehow miraculously clean up a little bit for you, then you'll never know. But if you go there and the place is a mess, if the children are unorderly, disorderly, like, you have to say, wow, this is going to be my home. So ask yourself if that's something you're comfortable with. I would look around the backyard. I would, see how the car is parked, see the condition of the car if they have one. Is it leaking? Like, it's just a lot of things you can really, catch on to during a home visit. So I think by, just looking at the selection criteria here, speaking to the current landlord, and if possible, doing a home visit, or just even just a drive by. Because if they're applying for the property, you'll know their current address. You can drive by, get a sense of what their living conditions are on the outside. But if possible, if you can go on the inside, that would just really, step your inspection game up to another level. So this is how I find my tenants, and it's been working great. So again, this is how you screen them. But as far as like nurturing the relationship over time, onboarding them correctly, more lessons to come. But if you follow this criteria, I guarantee you'll be in great shape. So if you have any questions, hit me up, info@mosesthementor.com. And for personalized one-on-one support, schedule your coaching. So that's it for this lesson. Let's keep on rocking.